What's going on, everybody? This is the host of Recover Out Loud podcast, Sean Young. Before we dive in, I want to be clear. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not here to diagnose or treat. I'm simply a catalyst, someone who's walked through the fire and now speaks from experience, reflection, and a deep desire to help others find their way forward. This podcast may include honest conversations about addiction, mental health challenges, and suicidal thoughts or ideations. These are real parts of the human experience, and we won't shy away from them. If you're listening, please do so with self-care and self-awareness. And if you're struggling, please reach out. There's help out there. And most importantly, there's hope. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's get it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud podcast. I am your host, Sean. Thank you for joining me today. Today, we got a very special guest. We have Jaime McCormick. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, Sean. Thank you for having me on, man.
Yeah, thanks for volunteering to share your story and your experience with us.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I feel like my life is mine to give away. It's not for me to better myself. It's for me to help others rise up to who they can be.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. So would you like to give us a formal introduction of yourself?
Right. Well, as you said, my name is Jaime. And in a nutshell, I am I'm still a martial artist. I was a second-degree black belt in martial arts. I was asked to try out for the Olympics in 1994 to prepare for 1996. I found the wrong people, ended up becoming addicted to drugs. Walked away from martial arts, only went back a couple of times, but never got in shape like I used to be. And then in 2001, probably November, the girl I was dating called me. She said, "Hey, I have to talk to you." I said, "What's up?" She said, "I'm pregnant and I'm leaving you for your best friend," all in the same sentence. And I went, "Well, okay." And I went in my bathroom. I looked in my mirror, and I'd seen the same image that I'd seen a million times, only it wasn't a martial artist. I was an addict, and I knew something had to change. So I started going to church, never looked back. Now I'm a father. I'm a Christian. Not a grandfather. I'm a papa is what they call me. I'm an investor, affiliate marketer, started my own business, and I'm an author and a speaker. So that's me in a nutshell. Of course, there's more through the journey and how I got there, but that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, it's a really good nutshell to be a part of, to be in. Yeah, we love the success stories, and we're going to get to that. But before we even jump into your story, how's your day been?
Oh, it's been good. It's been good. It's one of those days where I feel like there's something I have to do, but I don't know what it is. It's bugging me all day, and I don't have anything to do. But it's one of those weird things. But overall, it's been a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like that feeling of like I don't know what I have to do, but it's looming there, right? And eventually it will come to you. So, all right, Jaime. So you set the scene for us with your intro. You were a martial artist, black belt, and you're training to join the Olympics. How did your addiction start?
Well, a friend of mine worked for this guy. It was a pharmaceutical company, and his boss lived in Texas, and he was building a house, and he was getting the driveway built. He wanted my friend to go check on the progress of this driveway being built. He asked me if I wanted to go. I said, sure. So I was sitting at his table. It was a square table, and there was a mirror on it already, and a razor blade and a straw. And I kind of knew he messed with, powder and different things like that. And he walked past me, and as he did, he threw it over my shoulder. And he said, "Do you want some?" And it hit the table. And then he walked off. He wasn't even in the room. And I always say that because I don't believe in peer pressure. We're very capable of saying no to whatever situation it is. So I looked at it, and I cut me out a line, and I did it. And come to find out, he said I did a 0.5 gram in my first time, which is a lot. And I didn't know. I didn't measure it. I just dumped it out and did it,
Yeah.
And then I was talking all the way to Texas, all the way back, all that night, all the next day. And when my girlfriend found out, different one that I mentioned earlier, she didn't really get mad. She just said, "So what'd you think about it?" And I said, "I don't think I like it. I don't think I'm going to do it anymore." And that was the end of that. And then I met some different people who were using intravenously. I met them because I play bass guitar. One of them was a drummer. Another one was a guitar player. We started jamming, and I watched them do it, but I never partook of it. And then 6 months after my trip to Texas, I did it again, and I did it again. And then eventually they taught me into the needle, and it just kind of spiraled out of there. So again, there was no peer pressure. Every time I said no, they never, "You're a sissy." It was never none of that. It was just like, all right, cool. And then it just kind of spiraled out of control to where I wasn't even going to martial arts anymore. So that's how it began and how it got me.
I interviewed somebody over a year and a half ago, and cocaine was his drug of choice along with alcohol. And one of the things that he said that made me laugh hard, cocaine was never something that I dabbled in it, but I didn't go down that rabbit hole. But he said, I didn't like cocaine. I just liked the way it smelled. And
Right.
the funniest thing I've ever heard. And I was like, oh my God. But I hear that quite often, that it's, I like I said, I dabbled in it. I tried it and I realized that I liked it too much. And I was like, I can't do this. But it's already a full blown alcoholic at that point.
Right.
I was like, I'll be an addict. But like my brain just did not connect the two. So it's
Right.
pretty
Before I ever started doing meth, I was always doing pot. And then when pot, there were two different highs and I couldn't function. Pot brings me down, meth got you wired. I couldn't function. So I discarded the pot and just did the meth. And we were alcoholics. Well, we were at the liquor store at 9 a.m., for a half gallon of tequila. By noon, we were on our second half gallon. And that mixed with all the drugs. And it was just a horrible thing. We didn't dabble in it. We dove head first into whatever people brought over. We didn't care what it was. We just did it.
Yeah. Sometimes it was a smorgasbord, and other times it was like hey, we're just gonna do this and get it done.
Right.
Yeah. So you start, you start using intravenously and stuff like that. How far did it take you? How far did your addiction take you?
If my ex had not have said she was pregnant, I'd probably be dead by now.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we were suicidal. We just didn't care.
Yeah.
Our goal was whoever came over, our goal was to take them with us or leave them behind. And we left a few people behind because you guys are crazy, because we were stupid nuts about the stupidity. And we weren't cool. We weren't tough. We weren't smart. We were addicts. There's nothing cool about what we did. But yeah, it got to the point that I firmly believe that God gave me my daughter to save my life.
Absolutely. What was the turning point for you where you realized, like, this is just, it's gone too far and I can't like function anymore?
Well, before I was told I was going to be a father, I'd gotten tired of staying up, sleepless nights, of not eating, of just looking like trash. And I'd be like, God, I got to stop. And I wasn't a Christian at the time, but I'd always heard about God listens to prayers and all this stuff. And I was like, God, help me quit doing dope. And then I'd go and I'd do dope again. But for probably a year or so, I was praying, man, this has to stop. I'm not going to make it. And then I would do my drugs. I would throw up and then do more drugs and throw up and do more drugs. And then when she said, hey, I'm pregnant, when I looked in the mirror and I saw an addict, not a martial artist or not God's gift to women or not anybody cool, I realized there's a child coming into this world and she needs a dad who's going to be there. And that's when I went, I got to change. And I knew the change had to be me. It wasn't going to be anybody else. So I cut most of my friends out. I put my daughter first. I started going to church. And when I put my daughter first, I realized I have a lot of other things in my life that I could have been putting first all along. The drugs blinded me to it. So the turning point years earlier, it was just me getting tired of it. But when she said I'm going to be a dad, that was the point. I went, I can't do this. Because my daughter has heard many stories about me from people around town people who knew me before I quit drugs and people who knew me after I quit drugs. So she's heard all these horror stories and all these good stories about me. And that's why I've never lied to her about anything. I've told her everything to become clear because I want her to know whatever you're going through, Dad does understand. He's been there. But that was the turning point when she said, "Hey, I'm pregnant. Leave me for your best friend." That was it. I was done.
You know, I think that those conversations, I find, like, as a father, I find those conversations a little bit harder, right? The ones where you're sitting there talking and having to admit to your kid. I have a daughter, having to admit that to your kid, like, yeah, I wasn't the best human being then, and I've changed, but yeah, everything you've heard is true.
Right.
You know,
Right. That's, yeah. Having the conversation for me wasn't hard, but telling her whatever you hear is more than likely true, that was a little rough to, because kids have this image of their dad. Some don't, but mine does. That her dad is this guy, and then to hear this stuff and go, man, that's actually he did that. He did those things. That's a little hard to swallow, but it made me who I am, and it's helped me. I think become a better dad because, like I said, I do understand. I can be in her place. I've been in her shoes, so the conversation was easy, but admitting that, yeah, it's probably true. That part was probably rough.
yeah, I think like one of the hardest things for me to hear, and this just happened a few weeks ago. I was driving with my daughter. She lives with her mom in Tennessee, and I was driving around with my daughter, and she was like, "Dad, I heard that you were mean when you drank," and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I was not the nicest human being."
Right.
And she said, "Why?" And I said, "It's just how I was wired." I said, "I'm different now. I'm a lot different now. You've seen that, but I wasn't the best human being." And so, like you said, really holding that accountability and saying, yeah, it's true. It's more than likely true. That's not the easiest thing to say, especially to your kid.
Right on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you said you started going to church. Did you quit cold turkey? Was that like quit cold turkey, or did you go into some 12-step programs?
No, I quit cold turkey. No rehab, no withdrawals. I just stopped. I did drugs 2 more times after that with the same guy. And then I realized it was him. And I said, dude, I can't do this. I said, if you want to come to church with me, if you want to walk with me, that's cool. I said, but I'm not going to go to hell with you. I'm not going down that path anymore. So I did drugs twice after that. And then I just stopped. And I was just done. There was no shaking in bed. And I don't want to get onto how much drugs we did, but I probably shouldn't have been able to quit cold turkey like I did because it was rough. But yeah, no withdrawals, no rehab. I was just done. And I credit that all to God. I mean, I couldn't have done that, I don't think, without him.
Absolutely. How impactful was your relationship with God in the early stages of your recovery? Because like that has to be hard, going from a lifestyle where you're doing a lot of drugs and stuff like that to doing none and like kind of just like putting your focus elsewhere.
Right. I started reading scripture every day. I have a Bible read through yearly, so I can read a certain amount of chapters a day. And I read it religiously every day. And I had read the Bible before. I kind of grew up in church, but we just went because it was a cool thing to do. But we never did scripture. We never prayed at home. We never lived the life. We just talked it, but there was no walk in it.
Yeah.
And now I was walking it. And someone told me shortly after I became a Christian, they were like, man, you're different. You don't even cuss anymore. And I was like, yeah, I don't. But it was just a total change. And it was totally impactful because I could see a total 180 in the person I was. All of a sudden, I started gaining weight. I was looking better. I was darn sure acting better. And the guy, my friend that my ex left me for, to me, friends don't do that. I put my friends on this level. I thought they did the same thing. No, not so much. So I went looking for him 3 times. I was going to just beat the snot out of him. But I just put my head down. I couldn't touch him. But then after I really started becoming a Christian, I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't this mean guy, this black belt on cocaine. And it was impactful because it really changed how I effectively handled situations such as that one. Yeah, it was impactful because I did I did a 180, and it wasn't like a year-long thing. It was like overnight. I was just this different person.
Yeah. And that's really hard, especially going from, like you said, being, black belt, on cocaine to now a devoted Christian, and in the Bible, it teaches you to turn the cheek, and that had to have been hard, like, going and trying to find them and then just being like, I can't do this.
Right.
Like, as everything in me, in my brain, that devil and that angel, I can't do it.
Right. And I'll be honest, I don't know if I didn't do it because of God or if I didn't do it because of the respective friendship that we used to have. I really don't know which one it was at the time. Looking back on it, I believe it was God much more than the friendship, although I cherish that. Like, he was one of my top two best friends, like, ever. If he was around, I was there, or we were looking for each other when it was just how it was. And so it's sad that it ended the way it did.
Yeah.
But I believe God has to remove people from your life for you to become the new version of you that he wants you to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Now, doing your read through and being Christian for as long as you have, what would you say is your favorite Bible verse?
Zechariah 3:17. It says, the Lord God rejoices over us with singing. And to imagine this creator of the universe created everything, the Almighty singing, oh, Sean, oh, James, him singing over me, rejoicing over me. That's marvelous.
Yeah.
That's marvelous. Zechariah 3:17. I'm sorry, Zephaniah 3:17, not Zechariah, Zephaniah 3:17. The last of the verse says he rejoices over us with singing. And that, to awesome. Me, that's it.
That's awesome. I can't remember. So I don't necessarily believe in the monotheistic version of God, and that's okay. I don't judge anybody that does. But I think for me, I think it's in Matthew where Jesus is on the cross and it said he cried, and that was the moment, the transformation where he went from being a holy being to being a human, right, and being able to humanize himself and be human. And for me, I think that's very, very important, that transformation, right? Going from this angelic being, this godly being, to being human and feeling what we go through. Is, I mean, not that he didn't in his life. I mean, he was subject to temptation and all these other things, but in that moment, he became the embodiment of human. And so for me, that was really impactful.
Yeah.
I grew up in the church. I grew up many different religions. I was Pentecostal. I was Mennonite. I was non-denominational, apostolic. Like, I've seen a little bit of everything, and so I have a massive respect for the Christian faith and Christian religion. But moving forward, you are a motivational speaker, yeah?
I've changed it to transformational, because motivation comes and goes. You need daily motivation, but I try to get people to transform themselves. So yeah, I'm a transformational specialist is what I call, because motivational is so, like, everyone's a motivational speaker. If you think about it, even your friends, even if you're drunk sitting out talking to them, they motivate you. We're all motivational speakers.
Yeah.
What does that really get us? Not many places, but you find someone who can transform you. That's impactful. So yeah, I'm a transformational specialist.
That's awesome. Yeah. I never thought about it like that. Right. And now that you're mentioning it, I've heard some motivational speakers, and that motivation sticks while you're listening to them. But when you step away from it, it just disappears.
Right.
But when you are transformative specialist, that sticks with you because you have tools that you can actually apply to your life that can help transform your life. So what, being a transformative speaker, transformative specialist, how do you go about talking about some of these more heavier topics that to crowds that you are talking to?
Well, I just sit down and tell them my story, depending on the crowd that it is. My story's for everybody, but not for every event. So I don't try to go sell it at every event. I got my start in a psychiatric hospital working there, and I would tell these groups to these adults who were just lower than low. They were depressed and suicidal and addicted and didn't want to hear anybody say, "Hey, have a good day." They didn't want to hear that. So I would tell them my story. And one of them asked me if I was a motivational speaker, and I said no. She said, "Well, you should be." I just kind of blew it off. But then a coworker said it, then a nurse said it, and then someone said I should put my words on a CD and they listened to it in their car. One of them said I should write a book, and then it got to the point I was being requested by the adults to do these groups because I was doing the best groups in the hospital, which was never my intention. I never wanted to outdo anybody. I just wanted them to have something to hang on to. And then an elderly lady in her 80s, she said, "I want you to know your words saved my life." And that's when I went, okay, I got something to say. So I wrote a book called A Man Rising about my life, and the stories and everything that we've talked about here is in it. And when I go about talking to people, I don't talk at them. I talk to them. You know, I try not to talk down to them, and I try not to talk up to them, but try to talk eye level to everybody. And I relate real quick and say the only difference between you and me is the seats we're sitting in. I don't put anything on it, and I come at them as honest as I can be. I don't try to BS anything. You know, even if they say something, I'm like, well, that's not true. Let's talk about that. And that helped me come up with a teaching called perspective-driven purpose. I believe perspective will drive us to our purpose, and our purpose will lead us to the promise that we want. It'll help us set our life on fire. The problem is our perspectives, we often make mountains out of molehills because our perspective is wrong. So let's talk about a perspective. Let's let it drive us to our purpose.
Absolutely. You said so much that I really agree with, and I try to approach in my daily life, especially with not talking down to people or talking at them, but like holding a conversation. Because so many times in this world, you know, in the past and even in the present, we have so many people that are trying to talk down to us, especially with the evolution of social media, right? Like talking down to you and degrading you or telling you how horrible of a human being you are because of decisions that you've made in your past versus like where you're at now, right? Like leveling with people and being able to relate to them is so paramount in what you do.
Right. And I actually learned that from a former pastor of mine. He went to Singapore, and he said, if they think you're talking down to them, you lose their attention. If they think you're speaking up to them, you lose their attention. And that just stuck with me. Just talk straight to people. Don't talk down or up. Just talk to them. So that's where I got that idea from. And it works. It works.
Yeah, it does. And I also like, you know, where you said that you like to, you know, not necessarily call people on their BS, but, you know, say, hey, that's not true, but let's have a conversation around it. One of the things that I like to do is, you know, if I have an opinion-based conversation with somebody, I like to add to the conversation, not take away from it. Or I don't like to degrade people for, you know, their opinions. I just like to say, hey, look, you know, you have the right to your opinion, but let me offer you something else to change, you know, to potentially change your mind in this scenario.
Absolutely. When I'm just talking to somebody, I try to listen to understand before I listen to reply, or you can never reply properly. And before I give my opinion, I always ask, sometimes I forget and I just talk, but sometimes I ask them, would you like my opinion on that? Yeah. Because then it's more well received if they feel like they're requesting it than you're forcing it upon them. May I say something? You say, okay, cool. Here's what I think. And then 10 times are way more apt to accept it than if you just go, well, here's what I think. Well, they weren't asking what you think. Sometimes when they're talking, they just want someone to listen. They don't want to reply. They don't want to hug. They just want someone to go, I understand. And then they're good. Yeah,
absolutely. There's so much of that in the world. So much unsolicited advice. And I try to put that in my practice, in my daily practice too. If somebody's coming to me and they want to vent, and they're just talking about things and they're just rambled up, I'm like, okay, would you like an unsolicited opinion or unsolicited advice? Yes or no? If they say no, I'm like, cool, all right. If they say yeah, I'm like, okay, well, from my perspective, in my opinion, and I don't try and put that on, just saying, hey, this is how I conduct my business.
Right on. I dig that.
Yeah. I mean, and it creates, what I found is that it creates a mutual respect between the two sides, because you're actively listening to what they're bringing to the table, but you're also asking, hey, can I add to this conversation and not diminish your position.
Right. And I always try to add to the conversation. That way it's not a monologue, it's more like a dialogue.
Yeah.
Because monologues are just kind of people venting, and I let people vent. Like the first time that I talk to them, the second time we're going to talk solutions.
Yeah.
The first time, just vent. Second time, we're going to get around this.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to do it the second time or by the third time, then we're just kind of done talking. Like, okay, cool. But yeah, first time vent, second time let's figure a way out.
That's one of the things that I find I have a problem with, is that if somebody comes to me and they have a problem, and then they come to me and they have the same problem, and then they come to me and they have the same problem, it's like, okay, you've presented the same problem multiple times and there has been nothing done about it.
Right.
How are we going to change this? How are we going to fix this? So I absolutely love what you just said. And you also mentioned how the 80-year-old woman came to you and said that you saved her life. Was that at a moment that you needed it? Or was that kind of like a, hey, it was good to hear?
Well, I was in a good spot in my life, but I do think I needed it to get me to step out and become the speaker and author and things like that. Because I just wasn't going to do it. I was happy doing my groups at the psychiatric hospital. But when she said that, I went, wow, I can really affect people, and so I think it was what I needed, and I didn't even know I needed it. But yeah. I think I needed that little boost in the butt to get me to step out and go do something more besides stay hidden within four walls of the hospital.
Yeah. And I like to think, and I'll say this from the perspective of the Christian religion, God puts people in your path to get you to where you need to be. And there's so many times that I've had people put into my path that in the exact moment that I needed it, even with this podcast, vulnerability here, I was going to shut it down because I was like, I don't feel like I'm reaching anybody. And then somebody came to me and was like, you need to keep doing this. You have to keep doing this. Like, there's so many people that need to share their story, and there's so many people that need to hear it. And for me, that was validating because I needed it at that time, and I didn't even realize it.
Right. I'm an investor in a crypto called Texit.
Yep.
And I can't get anybody interested in it. Like everyone, like it's a scam, and it's actually not. It's growing at a great rate. I'm not trying to promote that right now, but I told the lady, I said I'm done promoting it. I said about 100% no's. I'm not going to waste my time. So I went to church. I'm listening to the sermon, and he's talking about how our life is not our own. And I thought about the gospel. If we had no one come to the gospel, would we stop preaching something we know can change our life? Let them say no, but you have to give them the opportunity, right? So your podcast, my message, we can't say no because everyone else seems to be saying no. I heard a story of a pastor who was he was overseas, and he was talking to people, and nobody was coming to the gospel. No one was accepting nothing. And he got really discouraged. And like 20 years later, an American came up to him, and his message had reached America. And this one guy said, I want you to know your message saved my life. He said, I'm now a Christian because of what you spoke. And this dude was like in London or something. Had no idea how far his message reached, but it saved one person that he knows of. And if what we do can save one person, it's worth every breath we have.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly. So tell us about this book, Man on Fire.
All right. Well, it's called A Man Rising.
Man Rising.
And I got the name because I read the book, but I wanted a name, and I was like, thunder and lightning, something cool, this and that would get people, but nothing worked. Yeah. And I ran into a friend of mine named Kenneth, and he said, Jaime McCormick. And I shook his hand. And as I did, he went, A Man Rising. And I went, boom, there's the book. There's the title. So it's called A Man Rising. And I like the name Rising instead of Risen because we're never fully risen, but we're always in the process of coming up and rising.
Yeah.
And I have the cover of a shadow of a figure walking out of flames because I want someone to look at it and go, that can be me. I don't want it to be me or a man or a woman. It could be anybody walking out of those flames. And the book doesn't have a bright color. It looks kind of flat, and I wanted that too because I don't want them to think that they have to be perfect. It's a flaw, everything about the book is flawed, but it's just my life and it's the stories in it. And people have said it's the most relatable motivational book they've ever read. So it's reaching someone. I've sold about 100 copies, but I've sold them worldwide. Like in Dubai, people reading about me, in France, in New Mexico, all over. And I'm just like, that's a weird feeling for some dude from Oklahoma, who was a drug addict, guitar player and martial artist, that people are reading about me across the ocean. That blows my mind completely.
Yeah, that is crazy. The reach that you have.
Right.
That's crazy. So you also built a business. Let's talk about that. Let's do that.
Yes, I have a speaking business, the transformational specialist, but I have a skateboarding business also called Skate Angry. And years ago, some friends got me into skating, and I would wreck a lot like most skaters do. And I'd get up, I would just take off as fast as I could. And a friend went, "Dang, Jamie, don't skate angry." But I thought that's a cool name for something. I didn't know what. Yeah. And it stayed with me all these years. And a couple of years ago, I sat on my couch and I went, I should start Skate Angry. And then I kind of sat up and I went, I should start Skate Angry. Like, this is the shirt I got right now, Skate Angry.
I like it.
And I thought, but what's it going to be about? Because most skateboarding companies have a world champion skateboarder behind them. I am not. So we're based on respect, integrity, and discipline. We want to be better than they are. And we sponsor kids to be skaters. We give them the opportunity to get to events. And we've also teamed up with a local college to give them educational financing and resources, because not everybody wants to be a skater. They want to be a doctor or a veterinarian or something, but they don't have the resources. Well, we help you get that. And I've reached out to some companies because I'm going to start putting on the contest the first of every month to the 25th, giving away 2 decks a month, 24 a year, to different people around America. And it's called the Why I Skate contest. They have to skaters or be whoever they want to be. But it's respect for yourself, integrity for the sport, and discipline to do what it takes to succeed. That's where the respect, integrity, and discipline come from. And the Skate Angry, it's not about being mad. I watched a skater about a year ago. He messed his move up, and he was frustrated, grabbed his deck, and he threw it. He went, and then he got the skateboard, and he took off, and I went, that's Skate Angry. When you're mad, you do it anyhow. But Skate Angry sounds cooler than Skate Motivated or Skate Professional. Skate Angry just has a cool gist to it. And the name of the team is called the Hood Rats. So we're the Skate Angry Hood Rats.
That's awesome.
So that's what Skate Angry is about.
So when you started skating, what has that done for you?
I didn't skate long, and I haven't skated in like 30 years. But when I was skating, when I'd go down those hills or off these steps, there was such a freedom with the wind in my hair. And it was just me and the board or the rollerblades or the skates or whatever we were on.
Yeah.
Just us. And when you do a move, when you do a ramp, you're in the air and you're hanging out in the air for 3-4 seconds, whatever it is. And then you hit the ground and you don't wreck. That's impressive. And I think it had kind of the same feel that martial arts did. As I went through the ranks, I was like, this is something I can do, something I can be proud of. So skating did that for me. It gave me an outlet. And that's what Skate Angry does, is I want these kids to do more than just try to stay out of jail. I want to give them a direction. Now, what they do with it is up to them, but I want to give them that push. Like I said, either get the education or let's go make you a pro skater. See what we can do.
Absolutely. I used to BMX when I was a teenager before I joined the Army. And
nice.
It was one of the most freeing things that I've done, in my early teen years. Like you said, when you hit a ramp and you're flying through the air and you're just free for those few seconds and you hit the ground.
Right.
I don't think I have aside from jumping out of airplanes in the Army, that's the most freeing feeling that I've ever felt in my life.
Right. Yeah. Because when you're up there, you don't hear nothing. It's just you, and all you see is the ground. You're so focused, on I don't want to wreck because this could really hurt.
Yeah. In my I say in my old age, I'm only 37, but in my old age, I don't know that I would trust myself to get on a bike again and try to do the things that I would do when I was 16, 15, 16.
Right on. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. There's just that fear that I have now that I didn't have then.
Yeah. I turned 55 this year, and I still have no fear of doing those things. My body tells me the next day I probably shouldn't be doing them, but I go try it anyways. I don't care. I've still got so much energy in me. A friend said, I look forward to the time when you get tired and you can actually say, hey, I want to go to sleep. But I just don't do that. I have so much energy still in me. I'm just ready to go. But my body does tell me, hey, you need to slow down, old man. Turning 55, you're not, like I said, 16.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, I take that energy and I go on a lot of hikes. And so
Nice.
within the past 2 years, I've found myself, putting my energy into that. And it tell you, it helps get you in shape, but it also puts you in a better mind frame when you get back home. I went on a hike like a month ago where we went up to these waterfalls that were secluded. Literally, there was just 2 parking spots, and then we walked out to the woods and we walked up this hill that led to like 30 to 40 waterfalls.
Oh,
and
wow.
I just found myself, I found myself in the middle of Maryland, in the middle of nowhere, right? Like we were on private property that you could actually walk on as long as you didn't make a mess. And it was just perfect. And I found myself just completely, I went there in a bad mood. And when I left, I was in the best mood that I'd been in a long time. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally love nature. There's not been too many times where I haven't found like a lake or a river or a mountain and been in a bad mood when I leave. It's just something about just seeing the openness. You're like, man, my problems are so small compared to this,
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely. And then just being able to be like, sit there, like I would sit on the rocks and just look down the waterfall and observe the water as it's falling and everything, and be like, all these things had to come together for this moment to happen. And like, just, giving gratitude to that moment that I have sitting with myself or sitting with my friends. It's just been really transformative. It's awesome. But I like to close my shows out and ask people, what are 3 things that you're grateful for today?
One is my life, because, like I said, of my past, I probably shouldn't be here. 2, I'm grateful that my daughter is growing up to the fine young lady that she's grown up with. She hasn't followed her father's footsteps. And I am the most grateful that there's a Lord God who gives me second chances and thirds and fourths and fifths and give me grace that I don't deserve. So those are my 3 things that I'm grateful for.
Absolutely, because if we were living in the Old Testament times, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
Oh, all right. Where can we find you, Jamie?
Well, I'm on Instagram. You can find McCormick_motivation, or you can find Skate Angry, one word. I'm also on Facebook. Just look me up, or you can reach out to me in my email, McCormickMotivation@yahoo.com or skateangry@yahoo.com, where we can discuss the contest or things going on. You can find my book on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, various book outlets, stuff like that. I have a skating website that's down right now. We're revamping everything, so it's not operational, but it will be skateangry.com when I finally get it up and running.
Sweet. That is awesome. Jamie, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for giving me an hour of your time to just sit with you and be able to hear your story and receive something from you that I needed today. Thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me talk. We don't know who we're going to touch, and anytime I get a chance to try and touch somebody, I'm grateful for it. Thank you for allowing me this.
Absolutely. And everybody, thank you for taking this time out of your day to listen or to watch. And I am grateful for you. And remember, be kind to yourself. Love yourself. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are worth it. Have a great day.
Right on.